Quotation from myself, segment 90, quotation number 1058. At some hard-to-pinpoint stage in literary history, evidently sick and tired of rhyming bright with flight and hard with art, the modern poets begin to look for their refuge from the banality of well-trodden ways in the non-rhyme free verse, bordering on and often almost indistinguishable from the rhythmic prose. Alas, this did not make them immune to the disease of commonplace obsolescence they so eagerly sought to escape, since no artistic form, no matter how innovative and fresh it look at first, can be protected from misuse and abuse when hundreds and hundreds of artists begin to replicate once proven successful pattern, and in the process turn new into old, original into worn out, fresh into stale. For the form, regrettably for those obsessed with it, can only carry one so far, but at the end nothing can substitute for the content, the disappearance of which was the next logically inevitable trend in this quest for liberation and innovation. For once being freed for rhyme, why not to free oneself from reason as well, since there is something exhilaratingly liberating in discarding the constraints of the accepted and the conventional, the largely precipitous process which starts like a tentative snowflake, but quickly gains speed and force until finally turning into avalanche sweeping away in its past all the rules and norms hitherto considered universally sacred. 1059. Imagine, if you can, Isaiah meeting Jeremiah, or if you wish, put any other prophets in their place. Would they have anything besides yet another drought in Negev desert of mutual interest and importance to talk about? I doubt it very much. I doubt it very much. For if they prophesy the same thing, then what one has to say would sound like a broken record or a tiresome echo of his own voice to another. And if their prophecy are contradictory, then considering the single-minded certainty the prophets usually possess, they would probably immediately label one another as a false prophet or worse. Which brings us quickly to the point I am trying to make, which is that what your average prophets need is the appreciative audience of credulous listeners. And the last thing he ought to do is to try to share his latest revelation with another prophet, who is of necessity his rival, for there could not be several futures equally true to come. One inevitably will cancel all the rest. Now, coming down from the prophetic heights to the somewhat less elevated grounds of mere intellectuals, it is obvious that even they have a hard time relating to each other. For there is no true intellectual worth his proposition and conclusions that does not fancy himself to be at least a minor prophet, and therefore naturally treats all other intellectuals as rivals or impostors and imitators, having the goal to claim as their own the revealed truth, which rightfully belonged to him as its first discoverer. 1060. It is one of the few universally accepted, almost to the point of being axiomatic, rules of social conduct, that one has to be nice to other people. And not only because it's ethically the right things to do, but also out of purely pragmatical consideration. For the one who doesn't treat the others well should expect to be treated in a likewise fashion in return, and nobody understandably wants this. Yet, despite the self-evident benefits to be derived from following the above-mentioned rule, for some people who are not naturally nice, but, let's be honest about it, downright nasty, to be nice is a rather difficult role to perform on a continuing basis. And so, every once in a while, some more often than the others, they lose control and begin to behave in the most natural for their manner, that is, acting their nastiness out. But since they know perfectly well that nastiness is uniformly disapproved, and also being afraid of retaliation, they are constantly looking for an excuse to justify it. And they do it in the easiest way possible by making the very people they mistreat responsible for it. Thus, in any conflicting situation, which their life seems to be full of, they invariably portray themselves as victims, never given enough respect, ones who are unappreciated, insulted, humiliated, abused, etc., etc. All of which, whether being true or false, allegedly gives them a perfect right, nay, the moral obligation to do to everybody else exactly what they accuse the others of doing to them. Moreover, after performing this miracle of transforming their nastiness into righteousness, they stubbornly persist in trying to make everybody else believe it, no matter how little sense it makes for the rest. Furthermore, because such nasty characters put themselves in a state of perpetual war with the rest of humanity, they divide it into the two categorically opposite groups, allies and enemies. And to become an enemy, one has to do as little as simply disagree with their interpretation of the conflict they are presently engaged in. Even impartiality is a hostile act as far as they are concerned. One is either blindly without any reservation for, or if not, then undoubtedly against them. In their universe there is no middle ground. Consequently, it is not surprising that as such people go through life, they accumulate more and more enemies and retain less and less friends. Could anything be done to help these people, or to be more precise, to help us to protect ourselves from them? Hardly. For since their nastiness must be innate, any attempt by outside world to correct it, or to prevent them from abusing almost everybody inside, is viewed by them as yet another proof of societal oppression and encroachment on their freedom, of misunderstanding and disrespect. 1061. One who is aware of his nastiness and even publicly acknowledges it is not much different, as far as his real behavior is concerned, from the one who vehemently denies it. Such an acknowledgement apparently makes him feel better, but hardly anybody else. For as long as his social conduct stays the same, it is of little consolation for the victim of his mean-spiritedness, whether he admits it or not. They suffer at his hands or mouth all the same. Moreover, such an acknowledgement should not be confused with repentance. On the contrary, it is by the warning to the rest of us that that's the way this person is, and he is neither willing or able to change. Therefore, we better get used to his abusive behavior for being now forewarned, and so we have no right to protest or complain anymore. 1062. Those who teach, preach, and practice literary analysis and criticism, like most academics employed by various and numerous departments of literature at university, do labor under the gross misapprehension of what books are written for. Being insulated from the rest of reading humanity by seemingly impenetrable walls of self-confidence in their intellectual superiority, and supported in this conduct but bestow upon the imposition of authority over the powerless students, they apparently are incapable of freeing themselves from the erroneous notion that books are written first and foremost to be analyzed and criticized. Yet it is obvious to anybody who does not remain forever in a state of absolute conviction that nobody else but a literary analyst and critic can fully understand and appreciate the written word, that nothing could be farther from the truth. Oh, let me do it again. Yet it is obvious to anybody who does not remain forever in a state of absolute conviction that nobody else but literary analyst and critic can fully understand and appreciate the written word, that nothing could be farther from the truth. For the one and only purpose why a writer writes a book is for a reader to read and enjoy it. 1063. One can have all the power and freedom in the world, but if he does not have it in his own house, everything else hardly matters. 1064. It is better to remain till the end unaware of one's latent potentials and capabilities than to discover them too late in life, when there is neither time nor energy left to develop them and to get recognition and acknowledgement for the results. For there is no worse affliction as one approaching death than the gnawing pain of the belated realization of wasted and unfulfilled life, of impotent regrets for what could have but yet has never been. It is like spending all your life in a decrepit hut, in a perpetual state of poverty and deprivation, only to discover at the very end of it that under the floor boards you were planning to make your coffin with, there had lied all this time a pot of gold. By what's the use of all these riches when one has no longer cheese to eat the fancy food, or a robust young body to wear the beautiful clothes, or the time to travel to all those wonderful places, or to do all those marvelous, exciting things one has always wanted to but could never afford till now? And what pangs of anger and frustration one must suffer from to get the means when the ends are no longer available. Does it really matter when it's too late, whether it's too little or too much? 1065. Everyone likes to be safe from harm, be it by God, by hero, or by one's fellow man. And yet, most people, most of the time, and in most situations, will either out of fear or indifference, laziness or lack of imagination, or for thousands of other clear or obscure reasons, do very little to save anybody, including surprisingly even themselves.